Welcome everybody to my little Foundations of Nutrition, kind of Nutrition Simplified, 3 Pillars of Health talk. If we haven't met before, my name's Caitlin. I'm a holistic nutritionist and a culinary nutrition expert. And I have been practicing in the field since about 2013. I see we've got a little baby friend joining us this evening. Hi, Layla. Hi, Kirsten.
Hey.
Oh, say hello. If you don't mind popping yourself on mute, perfect. That would be great. And so tonight I'm going to just share 3 of sort of the main pillars I tend to work on when I work with my clients, and the things that I tend to see come up that sort of, without changing much about the content of what we're putting in our diet, can make a big difference in our life. Just things that we combine, little different tips and tricks and things that we can do that can make a really big difference without kind of overhauling every single thing about the way that we're eating and living. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. And I'll try to leave lots of space and time at the end for questions. And you can always pop them in the chat as we go along. And if I'm able, I'll kind of answer them as I go. And if not, we'll save them for the end. But we're going to start with a little talk about blood sugar balance. So this is really the place that I always tend to start with all of my clients, is talking about blood sugar balance. So looking at this very basic concept of nutrition, this very basic concept of sort of food combining and looking at the way that we can sort of change, not necessarily the content of what we're eating, but the way that we eat it and the way that we can combine it in order to create a really balanced diet and a really balanced hormone and blood sugar levels. So it's really kind of the foundation of what I start with when I work with my coaching clients. And it's something that I find can make a huge difference, and it comes into meal timing and food combinations. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So the main thing about blood sugar balance is I like to use a little bit of a story. So when I work with my clients, the first thing I get them to do is keep a little food and mood journal. So just kind of sharing what their day-to-day looks like, when they're eating, how they're feeling, what their energy is like, all those different kinds of things that give me a little bit of insight into their life and how they're living and how they're feeling. And a lot of times when I get messages from clients who are like, you know what, I get these just crashes of energy in the afternoon. I can't make it to the evening feeling kind of stable and energized. I always need a nap, or I get really cranky, or I get really hangry, or I, get those little cravings and things that I can't really resist. And when I end up looking at their food and mood journal, I see something that's pretty similar across most of them. So it either is one of 2 scenarios. They're either skipping breakfast, which we'll talk about in a little more detail in a moment, or their breakfast is something like maybe a cup of coffee and a piece of toast, something not super substantial, something that generally is actually almost pure carbohydrate. And so they're waking up in the morning, they're grabbing something quick and easy, a muffin, a piece of toast, a bagel, something like that, and they're heading off to work. They get to mid-morning, they're getting a little bit snacky, they're getting a little bit hungry. They might go to the vending machines, or they might have a break room or have brought a snack, and maybe they grab some cookies or a donut, or some chips from the vending machine, or a granola bar, something like that. And they kind of get that little energy pick-me-up mid-morning. Lunchtime comes around, sandwich, something along those lines, and then 3 p.m. tends to hit, and they're like, that's when I hit my wall. That's when my energy just drops. It just kind of goes through the basement, and I need to crawl under my desk and have a nap, or I just get cranky and irritable. I get a headache, and they get home and there's nothing left in the tank. They really don't have much left to put into their evening, to put into their day. So they end up kind of, not going out and doing the things they want to do. So what's happening in this scenario is they're kind of entering onto a blood sugar roller coaster. So on average in the human body, a healthy amount of sugar that should be circulating in our system is about 1 teaspoon. So that's 4 grams of carbohydrate or glucose or sugar, all the same thing basically. If they're starting their morning with something like a bagel, they're starting their day with 49 grams of carbohydrate. Or they're grabbing a cafe latte, that's 20 grams of sugar that they're taking in. Or maybe they're having a pop or a soft drink or something like that, and getting another 20 to 50 grams of sugar. And so our body, we eat that food or we drink that coffee or that specialty drink, and we end up kind of getting a big spike in glucose in our blood sugar, and our body panics because we're getting more than that 4 grams in our bloodstream. So we get a big spike, and so our body produces a hormone called insulin. And the role of insulin is to take that big spike of sugar and to help take the sugar out of our bloodstream and transport it to our energy cells, transport it to the liver to get stored, just kind of clearing it out of the bloodstream. So what happens then? Any sugar that can't be utilized immediately for energy, so we do like to burn carbohydrates for energy, or stored as glycogen, so we have certain amount of storage molecules available where we can store glycogen in the liver, gets converted to fat in our liver. And so that's how we then end up storing that glucose. Eating too much of those sugars or easily digested carbs, so we're kind of taking that in, we're filling up all of our cells, we get that big spike in sugar, and then we get a crash. So we're clearing the sugar from the bloodstream, and that's when we tend to get that crash in energy, and then we start to produce sort of stress hormones like adrenaline or cortisol that kind of give us that boost and help to free sugar from our storage units. And then they send us off seeking out and looking for carbohydrates for that quick hit of energy. So that's when we get kind of that buzzy sugar rush. We're kind of running up. Then we get that crash when insulin kind of overcompensates. And then we get that seeking, that craving, that hanger. We're looking for more carbohydrate. We're looking for more sugar. And so that leads, if we're doing that, 5-6 times throughout our day, reaching for kind of that carbohydrate rich snack instead of kind of a more balanced meal, we're doing that several times throughout the day. Of course, we don't have anything left when it comes to our evening. We've been kind of fluctuating up and down and up and down and up and down. So kind of some of the symptoms and signs of that blood sugar is that we tend to end up kind of seeking out, and we get that exhaustion, we get the headaches, the irritability, all those different kinds of things. So what causes these sorts of imbalances? So things like eating meals that are really high in simple carbohydrates, so your bagels, your pastas, your breads, a lot of granola bars, fancy coffees, all those different kinds of things, soft drinks can really contain a lot of sugar in a very small package that we might not realize. So they're really easily digested. We kind of eat them. They don't stick around in the belly for a really long time, and it leads to a big spike in our blood sugar and then a big crash. It kind of stresses our pancreas, it stresses our insulin function, and eventually, if we keep doing this every meal, every snack, day after day after day after day, our body starts to kind of turn off our insulin sensitivity. So when insulin kind of takes the sugar molecule from our bloodstream and tries to transport it into our cells close the curtains, close the door, and say, you know what, we're full up, we don't have any more space. And if we do this long term enough, we end up developing insulin resistance and that chronically elevated blood sugar that can eventually translate into type 2 diabetes or other sort of side effects down the line. So it can create inflammatory responses. There's these things called advanced glycation end products. And that what happens there is these little excess sugar molecules that are circulating through the bloodstream tend to bind to our protein and our fat molecules, and it makes them no longer function optimally. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping our blood sugar nice and stable. And there's really simple things that you can do to keep that those spikes and crashes from happening. So a big one is to make sure that all your meals and snacks combine not just carbohydrates, but healthy proteins and healthy sources of fats, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And then you want to be looking at things like complex carbohydrates, so your whole grains instead of refined grains. You want to be bringing in beans and lentils and legumes, nuts and seeds, fruits and veggies. All those kinds of foods are going to be really rich in complex carbohydrates and rich in fiber to keep your blood sugar nice and stable. You can consume plant-based proteins. You can consume animal-based proteins. So again, your nuts, seeds, beans, lentils, all those things are going to be great sources of plant-based protein. And then, of course, things like eggs and meat from poultry or free-range ruminant animals like beef or lamb or pork, those types of things. So what you really want to do is you want to combine all three of the major macronutrients. So carbohydrates, healthy fats, and healthy proteins in your snacks and in your meals. And if a good rule of thumb is if you can't get all three, at least try to get two, because the protein and the fat take a lot longer to digest in the stomach than the simple carbohydrates and simple sugars. So not only do they hang around a lot longer in the stomach, so you actually feel physically fuller for a longer period of time, when the food actually leaves the stomach, it's not just pure sugar leaving the stomach. So you're not getting that big spike. You're actually getting a nice gentle elevation, which your body expects and is used to. And you're getting a really good kind of stable elevation and then gentle drop as you produce enough, but not too much insulin to kind of store and utilize all those good nutrients that you're eating. So, a lot of people think, oh my God, insulin, it's so bad for you. It's so bad for you. It's not at all. Insulin is very important and it's a really great growth and development hormone, but we just want to make sure we're producing enough of it at the right times. So keeping our sugar stable and eating within, about an hour of waking kind of sends that signal to the body that our blood sugar can stay nice and stable throughout the day, so we don't get those peaks and crashes in energy and in hormones. So we're not kind of spiking insulin, and then as the blood sugar drops, we're not then spiking our stress hormones, which make us kind of agitated and irritable and a little more anxious. So that's the first pillar. And if you do nothing else, if you learn about the basics of blood sugar balance and combining your foods and making sure you're eating sort of within that first hour of waking, you can see really great benefits and changes to your overall energy and to your blood sugar readings as well. So I have a lot of clients who come to me who might have elevated fasting glucose or elevated glucose levels or higher insulin. And when we learn this process, they can really see how different foods kind of spike or keep their sugars nice and stable and healthy. So that's pillar one. I know that was quite a bit. I'm going to send out the handout for this presentation. So don't feel like if you didn't catch it all that you're missing out. I'll send everything to you. But do you have any questions before we move on to sort of the next little foundation for this chat? You can pop them in the chat or feel free to kind of take yourself off mute if you wanted to. If you see me looking down, I managed to get in without echoing. So I'm just kind of making sure I can let everybody in and see all the chats. All right, so seems like we're good on the blood sugar balance. So we're going to move on to the second pillar, which is learning about healthy fats and healthy oils. And this is generally kind of the second step that I like to take with people, is learning about, we learn about blood sugar balance, and then we learn about the different types and roles of healthy fats in the body. So for many, 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 many years, fat was really vilified by sort of the dietetics and nutrition community, by the medical community, in the media, everywhere. They kind of said everything needs to be low fat. We don't want to eat any fat. We especially don't want to eat animal fats. but we can eat sort of these vegetable oils and things like that. The intentions behind these suggestions were, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, very helpful. They were trying to make people healthier and feel better and live longer. In practice, it didn't really have the impact that they were hoping it would have. So the actual recommendations were based off of some flawed studies, which I don't really have enough time to get into today, but if you take any of my courses or things like that, I talk about in a lot more detail. But, you know, in the last about 10, 15 years, the sort of nutrition community, the medical community has come out and been like, you know what? Actually, we might have jumped the gun a little bit on this concept of cholesterol and saturated fat and trying to make everything low fat, because what do when they take fat out of a product? They generally load it up with a ton of sugar, because if you take out the fat, it's not going to taste very good. What tastes good and what balances that out? Sugar. So you're kind of taking out the fat and you're adding in the sugar, and that can create some kind of food products that might not necessarily be the most health promoting things on the market. And so what we want to look at is the role of including these healthy fats in the diet. So some types of fats, which we'll get into in a little more detail in a moment, can actually sort of initiate or instigate or turn on the inflammatory pathways in the body when we have too much of them or when they're out of balance with other fats in the diet. Other fats that we take in, such as our omega-3 fats, can actually help to modulate or manage or stabilize the inflammatory processes in the body. So what we want to do is we want to have a good balance of sort of our anti-inflammatory omega-3 fats and our fats that are mostly rich in omega-6. Those are kind of the ones that are more likely to turn on that inflammatory process, are fats that are high in omega-6. We'll look at those, like I said, in just a moment. But we really need fat for so many things in the body. So our brains, by dry weight, are 60% fat. So that's a pretty big amount. And most of that is kind of omega-3, a little bit of omega-6, some saturated fat, but a really high proportion of omega-3 fat is found in the brain. Most of our cells use different fats to actually create the cell barriers, and we want them to be nice and flexible so that the things we need can pass into the cells, and then the kind of processes of metabolism stuff can pass out and be excreted from the body. So we need our fats to create supple and healthy cell walls. We need healthy fat to keep our skin feeling really soft and really kind of vibrant and healthy, and keep us from getting a lot of those dry patches and that flakiness and that itchy skin. If we don't have enough healthy fat to kind of serve our brain and to serve our cellular development, it's going to pull it away from our skin and our less biologically necessary processes, such as kind of, you know, that glowing, healthy skin. So we want to make sure we're getting enough of the healthy kinds of fats. And I'm not saying, you know, that you need to go and eat 50%, 60%, 70% of your calories from fat. No way. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am saying is that we don't need to restrict and kind of remove fat from our diet in a really intensive way. We want to bring in sort of these healthy sources and just incorporate them into the general way that we're eating. So in order to kind of understand the different types of fats, I wanted to quickly touch on some of the fats that might not necessarily need to have like a highlighted place in the diet. And the kind of main focus of that are the vegetable oils. And those, none of them come from vegetables. They all come from legumes or from seeds. There's, your canola, peanut, soy, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, and corn oils are the ones you're typically going to see on the market. They go through a 7-step process in order to get the seed or the legume to produce that oil. It includes using deodorizers, using byproducts of petrochemical industries, so heptane and hexane, to help extract those fatty acids, and a heating process and things that can leave them a little bit rancid and just not the best oils to incorporate in the diet. These fats are also incredibly high in those omega-6 fats that I briefly mentioned. So I said there are some types of fats that can upregulate or kind of initiate or add a little fuel to the inflammatory fire in the body. And those fats are omega-6 fats. So arachidonic acid is one of the major ones, but there's a few other omega-6 fats that can really sort of increase that production of inflammatory cytokines. So historically, what a lot of kind of evolutionary biologists and nutritionists and people have discovered is that we would have evolved over time consuming a diet that had maybe, 4 parts omega-6 fat to 1 part omega-3, or even a 1-to-1 ratio omega-6 to omega-3. So it was relatively stable. We had kind of a similar amount of both types of fat. What happens now is that these vegetable oils are used in basically every processed food, in every restaurant, in most sauces and things that you're going to buy prepared and prepackaged. So we're getting to a level where we're consuming about 20 parts omega-6. I don't have 20 fingers, but there we go. 20 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. And so what that does is it really sets the stage to increase that inflammatory environment in the body. So what we want to do, because we're never going to, completely eliminate vegetable oils, that would create way too much tension and rigidity and restriction in the diet. But what I recommend is when we're at home, when we're cooking for ourselves, that we don't use these fats in our own kitchen, so that when we go to restaurants or we eat out or we're at friends or, we're traveling, we can enjoy these foods without worrying that we're really going to throw off that balance of omega-6 to omega-3. So I always suggest, you don't need to go out and clear out your whole cabinet and buy all these different types of oils to replace your vegetable oils right away. I say, finish up what you have. And then when you get rid of your canola oil, for example, maybe you pick up an avocado oil or an olive oil or a coconut oil or something else to use instead that's going to have more of either a monounsaturated or an omega-3 fat, or even those healthy short chain or medium chain saturated fatty acids, which can have a lot of benefit in the body. So the next ones we want to avoid are hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fats. So these come from the aforementioned vegetable oils, and they are typically used in a lot of processed foods when food producers want to take something that is liquid and turn it into a solid. So those vegetable oils, they're all liquids, they're all oils. And when we want them to turn into a solid to be used in baked goods or pastries or something like that, they need to go through this process of hydrogenation. And this process basically takes those omega-6 oils, omega-6 rich oils, which are very sensitive to heat, light, and air. When they're exposed to these 3 elements, they can go rancid very, very quickly. What does hydrogenation do? It heats them to about 250 to 410 degrees Fahrenheit, so it boils them. It adds a metal catalyst, which is usually like a nickel or something, and then it boils them until all the hydrogen bonds in these unsaturated fatty acids get connected and create sort of a solid. But the end product includes different things like those trans fats, which have been banned in a lot of processed foods because the impacts in the body are so detrimental and so obvious. There's also unnatural fatty acid fragments, little hydrocarbons, and different things that our body just doesn't recognize as food or as, as something that they know how to work with. And they can actually create, over the long term, if we consume enough of them over time, we can kind of potentially promote an immune response as our body runs into these different sort of fats, hydrogenated fats and partially hydrogenated fats. So the partially hydrogenated ones are the worst. Those are the ones where you're going to get a ton of trans fats and different things. But we want to avoid those hydrogenated fats as much as possible. And if we're looking for, a fat that's solid at room temperature that we want to use, we can use things like an organic butter. We could use a coconut oil or something else that's going to that has come from a whole food source, instead of going through 7, 8, 9, 10 steps to get from little seed to clear, white, odd, fat product that we don't really get much nutrition or benefit from. So we start with learning to balance our blood sugar and incorporating those healthy fats and proteins and things. And then we dive a little bit deeper and we learn about what kinds of fats are going to be best left off of our plate, and learning more about incorporating whole food sources of healthy fats. So I think that's pillar 2. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box and I can answer them. You can also save them for the end if you'd like, before we move on. But whatever you prefer, I've got my little chat pulled up, so you're welcome to pop a little question in there if you've got one. All right. I don't see any coming in at the moment, so we'll move on to our third and final pillar, which I could probably talk about for like 5 hours, but I'm going to keep it pretty brief here. The final pillar is a healthy gut. So Hippocrates, I believe, was the one who said all disease begins in the gut. And also food is medicine. He had lots of little really great quotable pieces of wisdom. But thousands of years later, we've really learned that gut health is imperative to the health throughout the rest of our body. So our digestive tract, a lot of people don't think of this, but our digestive tract actually is outside of our body. So when we consume something, it doesn't actually enter into our cells and our tissues in our body until it gets broken down and absorbed through our digestive system. So it's kind of our line of defense against the things that we eat to make sure it keeps, pathogens and bacteria and things out of the body and only absorbs the nutrients and the foods and the proteins and fats and carbohydrates that we need for energy and cell production and metabolism. So having a really strong and healthy gut is one of the greatest ways to ensure that we have long-term health. So we want to take care of our digestive system because we're not what we eat, we are what we digest, absorb, and assimilate. So a leaky gut is being found to be at the sort of foundation or being a root cause of lots of inflammatory conditions. If you look it up in the literature, it's going to be called intestinal permeability, but they're finding links between it and things like chronic inflammatory conditions, autoimmune issues, chronic long-term digestive dysfunction, and just a lot of those different symptoms and things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not saying, it's the magic silver bullet that's going to heal you from every single ill and issue that you have, but it is something that is worth looking at if you're struggling with digestion, with inflammation and things. So we're going to look at what a healthy gut is and what can cause some signs and symptoms of leaky gut, and then how to support our gut health. And Patricia, I did see your question, and I'll explain it at the end now that we're talking about leaky gut. So I'll look at it in a bit more detail when we get to the end. So what is leaky gut? In our digestive tract, you can see I've got a little photo up on the screen here. And on one side, you'll see there's a bunch of cells and they're stuck together nice and close and nice and tightly with something called a tight junction. You can see the little finger-like projections on top of those cells of the digestive tract. Those are called our villi. And then on top of the villi, there's even smaller little cells or little projections called microvilli. And if you actually took your small intestine and spread flat all the villi and microvilli and the brush border, it would be about the size of a tennis court. So we've got a huge, huge area for absorbing and assimilating the food that we eat. But we want to make sure it's functioning optimally. So we want to have those tight junctures, and we only want the food that we absorb and eat to pass through these little villi and microvilli. You can look, if you see me in the corner, I've got my little villi fingers kind of going. So we want to eat our food And so when we eat a protein and we chew it and it gets broken down in the stomach and then gets sent to the small intestine, enzymes then work to break the protein down into single amino acids. So it goes from long protein sequences to single amino acids. When we eat our fats, it goes from fatty acid molecules, usually with 3 or 4 little tails on them, to single monoglyceride. So that's one little head and one little tail. So it's a single fatty acid molecule. And we go from complex carbohydrates, so carbs that have got a bunch of different sugars all connected together. Our enzymes start to break them down, and it breaks them down into simple sugars. And those single molecules are what our body expects our food to look like when we eat it. So when we eat our food, we chew it up, we break it down, enzymes digest it even further. Then those single molecules pass through, you can see those little villi on the screen, pass through that brush border, get absorbed. And underneath that cell of the digestive tract, you can see there is a sort of venous system or bloodstream system that takes the food that we eat and moves those things to the liver or shuttles them throughout the body to where they're needed. So that is a normal, healthy, functioning gut. We've got those tight junctures. We're only really absorbing the single amino acids, simple sugars, and single fatty acids. Any bacteria, any parasites, any whole chunks of protein and things aren't able to pass through the brush border, and they continue getting digested or they get excreted in our bowel movements. When our digestive tract, so when the small intestine is inflamed, we tend to get spaces between those tight junctions. So you get gaps or spaces between the tight junctions, and sometimes the cells themselves can even split apart if they get damaged. So on the other side of the little diagram, you can see there's a brighter red cell. The cells are a little brighter red, they're inflamed, there's large spaces between them, and you can see that pathogens and whole food particles are able to pass through those spaces because they're too big to pass through the brush border, but when those junctions open up, suddenly there's a little bit of a free-for-all and they're able to sort of wriggle through that space. And then they pass into the bloodstream. And our body is incredibly intelligent, and just the design of the human body is amazing. I love it. It's fascinating. But about 70 or 80% of our immune system actually is located around our digestive tract. It's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So when we eat something and say those pathogenic bacteria or fungi or parasites or those whole food particles pass through the gut, don't worry, we've got an immune system right there ready to create antibodies or immune complexes to kind of trap them and get them out of the bloodstream and out of circulation. But if that's happening all day, every single meal, every time you eat, your immune system never really gets an opportunity to turn off. So if you're constantly on high alert because every time you eat, all these food particles and bacteria and yeasts and things are passing through into the lymphoid tissue, it can set us up for chronic inflammation. It can set us up even for things like autoimmunity, because sometimes the proteins that pass through our digestive tract, look very similar to the proteins of the cells in our bodies. So when we create an antigen or an antibody to something, our cells don't look at the entire protein sequence. It takes a little chain and it goes, okay, I recognize this. I know that this is not me, so this isn't part of my body. I need to create something to trap and excrete this and attack this little pathogen or parasite or whatever the case may be, and get it out of circulation. But if, say, for example, a common one is the gluten protein, looks very, very similar to proteins found in the thyroid. So they've found actually a very big correlation between Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis and people who have leaky gut and a gluten intolerance or allergy. So our body starts to see the thyroid tissue suddenly as not of us. And this isn't for every single autoimmune condition out there, but it can be a trigger if you already have sort of the underlying propensity to get an autoimmune condition. So we have genes that will set us up to get different, to be susceptible to different conditions. And when the environment is right, those kind of triggers can come into place. And so this leaky gut might be one of the triggers that could set that immune system into over processing, over attacking, and getting to that place where instead of just attacking the things that are passing into our system, it starts attacking our own tissues. So we want to keep the health of our gut really strong and healthy, and we want to take away things that might be irritating or causing issues with our gut health and our gut integrity. So a big one is, a big trigger is antibiotics. If we use them over and over and over again without rebalancing with a probiotic or something along those lines, that can trigger some permeability in the gut. The birth control pill can cause a little intestinal permeability. So if you're taking the birth control pill, then you want to be doing other things to support your gut health. Alcohol, caffeine, eating too many refined sugars and things like that can feed pathogenic bacteria, which can cause an inflammatory response, which can open up those tight junctures. If you're eating foods that you might be allergic to, again, sets off that inflammatory response and can cause the opening of those spaces. Stress is a really big one. So long-term chronic stress changes the balance of beneficial to pathogenic bacteria in the gut and can cause some of that gut permeability. Another big one that they've found in studies is that everybody, regardless of whether they're gluten intolerant or have celiac or something like that, everybody, when they eat gluten, get some intestinal permeability, because when we consume that food, our body produces in response a protein called zonulin, and zonulin triggers the cells in the gut to separate. In people who don't have other inflammatory conditions or other issues with digestion, generally it's going to seal right up and not be a huge issue. But say maybe you eat gluten 4, 5, 6 times a day, you never get the chance to close those gaps, or maybe you already have some other underlying conditions. Maybe you are taking the birth control pill, or you're under a lot of stress, or you already have a lot of gas and bloating and issues like that. It can be just another little trigger that can make that permeability worse and unable to sort of close up and heal and seal. So there's a few different things that can cause those spaces to open up, and we want to look at kind of removing or managing and balancing those different triggers, and then adding in different foods and things that can actually start to heal and seal and support the digestive tract. So a lot of times when I work with clients, we're going to take away foods that can trigger inflammation in the gut. A big one, like I just mentioned, is gluten. And what I always kind of do is, it's not necessarily we need to be gluten-free forever, but in order to heal and create balance in the gut, maybe we need to be gluten-free for 4, 6, 8 weeks to allow that healing to happen. And then we test and see physically how you feel when you reincorporate it. Another big one is dairy. There's a specific protein called casein A1 in dairy that actually binds to different receptors in the gut to trigger an inflammatory response. So again, if we're seeing a lot of inflammation, and if I'm seeing a lot of signs and symptoms of leaky gut, that's another one we'll remove. Again, I'd like to do short-term tests where we take away things that might be exacerbating or making the inflammation in the gut worse, and then adding in things that can kind of heal and balance the gut. And then we test and see if those foods are still causing issues for us after we do a little bit of a healing protocol. So some of the things that I like to do are incorporate things like bone broths into the diet. Now that we're in sort of winter, or not winter yet, fall, in that cozy fall season, adding in a bone broth is really helpful. If you're not a fan of bone broth, taking a collagen powder, adding it to your smoothies or your coffee or your tea or hot chocolates can be really great. Taking a probiotic supplement and adding in different nutrients and things that are really gut supportive is a great way to sort of heal and seal the digestive tract. Because although it might seem like, oh my gosh, everything causes leaky gut, the beautiful thing about the digestive system is the cells turn over in the small intestines roughly every 3 days. So once we take away a lot of those triggers, we can actually repair and renew those cells pretty quickly. We can start to see a lot of benefit in doing just very simple little things. So leaky gut, this is kind of just like the surface of it, but it's something to become aware of. And if you think it might be something, if you're kind of seeing yourself, oh, well, yeah, I get a lot of gas, I get a lot of bloating. When I eat, I get a lot of pain in the digestive tract, or I get a lot of like achy joints, or I have a lot of autoimmune conditions, or I get a lot of inflammation in the body. It might be something that's worth kind of digging into to see, okay, maybe I need to do a little bit of gut and digestive support. So that's kind of the 3 pillars, and they kind of all interconnect with one another. So you can do 1, you could do 2, you could do all 3, and bringing them all together really kind of gives you that really stable foundation to create a lifestyle and a diet and a way of living that is, without, like I said, really changing tons and tons about what you're eating, but changing the way you look at the foods that you're eating and the quality and where they're coming from and how you time them and what you balance them with can make a really big difference in sort of your long-term overall health. So any questions about kind of leaky gut here? What types of fats do you recommend aside from avocado and nuts? Okay, so I'm going to move on just to the last bit, and then we'll get to our questions. So if you're, kind of been interested in what I've been talking about here, I'm actually going to be launching a 4-week small group coaching program. So where we're going to be going into a lot of these pillars in a lot more detail and really learning more about how we can incorporate them into our lives, and where you can learn, again, it's not a specific diet, it's not a specific way of eating, just learning these skills and the information so you can feel really empowered to make your best decisions based on what you think or what you find are your physical needs. So it's looking at the basic framework of how to eat for long-term health and what the basic anti-inflammatory, kind of food pyramid looks like. It's great for people who might feel really confused about, what is the right way to eat. You see all these different articles and things in the newspaper and online and on Facebook and here and there, and you're like, are eggs going to kill me? Are they worse for me than smoking? Should I be vegetarian? Should I go keto? Should I do intermittent fasting? And you kind of just want to cut through kind of all the bullshit and all the noise and just learn like the good, basic, solid foundation of eating for your health goals without a specific prescription or dietary process, or, oh, I can only eat in this short window and I have to cut out all my carbs or this or that. Then that's really what we're going to be looking at, is those simple action steps that you can take, learning the information and the why behind different dietary recommendations that sort of stand the test of time. And so you can feel really empowered to kind of take action and incorporate them into your life. So we do a lot of accountability. So every week there's a 1-hour live coaching session. So it'll be every Tuesday evening. We'll go over the week's theme. So there's blood sugar balance, there's anti-inflammatory fats, there's the benefits of probiotics and gut health. And then the last week is how to build an anti-inflammatory diet. We have a big discussion. We answer any questions. I give handouts related to the week's themes, plus recipes that go along with what we've learned. I share action step exercises, so different things that you can do, really simple, just 5, 10, 15 minutes a week that you can incorporate these lessons from the sessions into your life, so that as you keep going, you've built all these really great habits in a short 4-week period. And then you get access to the Facebook group where we can share recipes and inspiration and have that accountability, that motivation to stick with these things and to share what we've learned. So it starts November 9th, so in 2 weeks. Time commitment, it runs Tuesday evenings, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Atlantic time. So that's our 1-hour kind of live coaching. And then every week you have just some little exercises 10 to 30 minutes, nothing huge, nothing major. And I'm limiting it to only 10 people. I've already had a couple people jumped the gun and signed up earlier, but it's for 10 people, and it's $150 for the 4 weeks. And if you live in New Brunswick, you can likely claim it through your insurance. I'm able to issue insurance receipts for all companies in New Brunswick aside from Blue Cross. They're so titchy, they're hard to, they just won't accept certain certifications, and Industrial Alliance. But any other ones, Sun Life, Great West, all those other ones, anyone but Blue Cross and Industrial Alliance, I will be able to give receipts for, and you don't have to share your personal health struggles. So that's kind of what I've got coming up in November. So it will be sort of kind of this style. I'll share a little short information about the week, but then because we're a small group, we're really able to take everyone off mute and chat and kind of get into the nitty gritty and get into more detail about these things. So just wanted to share that. And then now I'm going to hop in and answer some questions that I got through the chat here. So I'm going to close off the full screen, and there we go. Stop the share. Okay. So first question I got here, what's the difference? Thanks, Patricia, for this first question. What's the difference between ghee butter, grass-fed butter, and regular butter? Great question. So the ghee, I'll start there. Ghee is butter that has been clarified. So it's essentially been really gently heated so that the milk solids and the protein and the lactose from the ghee float to the top, and then they get skimmed off and removed. So ghee is essentially like a very gently heated clarified butter. It's got a really delicious, lovely, almost toasty flavor to it. And it's stable at room temperature, so you can kind of leave it in your cupboard and you can use it. It's amazing for high heat cooking because it doesn't contain any unsaturated or polyunsaturated fats. And it's a great source of sort of fat soluble vitamins like vitamins A, vitamin E, D, and a little bit of K as well. It also contains short chain fatty acids called butyric acid, which are great for gut health and function. And then grass-fed butter is essentially just butter, but it comes from cows who have been fed on pasture. So they get a more natural diet, and so it's generally higher in fatty acid called CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, which is really helpful and beneficial for gut health and for energy and things like that. Regular butter comes from cows who may have been fed some grass, but mostly probably live a diet based on grains and things. And so they aren't eating a diet that's fully aligned with their physiology. So this fat can be a little less abundant in the CLA and the kind of omega fats, and higher in some of those more inflammatory fats. So it's in a pinch, it'll do, but if possible, I would say, go organic or go grass-fed because it's going to have higher levels of those beneficial fats. And I'm gonna just pop the link to the small group coaching into the chat here, in case anyone's interested. And I'm gonna take a look at our next question. Oh, and what types of fats do you recommend aside from avocado and nuts? Awesome question, Anne. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for answering.
So one of my favorites, butter, I just mentioned. I love using butter. It's a great high heat cooking fat. Olive oil is a wonderful fat to use for salad dressings or kind of lower heat or roasting. It's really high in monounsaturated fats, so it's more stable at higher temperatures. A lot of olive oil is really rich in antioxidants as well. The more you heat it, the fewer antioxidants it will contain, but it's not going to go rancid unless you kind of boil it for 36 hours. So it's not when you use it for higher heats, it's not necessarily that you're going to create these rancid fatty acid fragments or anything. You're just going to lose some of the antioxidant benefits. And then another one that I really love is coconut oil. Not everyone's favorite if they don't love the flavor of coconut, but I find it's really nice in baking because it has just a subtle natural sweetness to it. And it's great for higher heat roasting and baking. Again, because it's a saturated fat, so it doesn't get denatured at those higher temperatures. And you can buy a deodorized coconut oil if you'd like. It has gone through that one extra step of being deodorized, but so it doesn't have that coconutty flavor or smell. So it is slightly more processed, but you're still getting the medium chain fats and things in there that are going to be good for your liver health and brain health and good for energy production. So love coconut oil. If you can find a sort of organic or eco-friendly source of palm oil. So a lot of palm oil is over harvested and causes the destruction of habitats for orangutans and our other little animal friends. So we want to find palm oil that comes from a sustainably harvested source. I believe Nutiva makes a good one, and palm oil, if you can find it from that source, is really a beautiful, it's like a bright orange almost color, so it has a lot of antioxidants and benefits to it. It's, again, a stable high heat cooking fat. So you can try some palm oil. If you're looking for fats not to cook with, but just to eat, maybe in a salad dressing or to throw into your smoothie, I love hemp oil, flax oil, walnut oil. What's that other one? Just popped out of my brain. Three Farmers, what's it? Camelina oil. So camelina oil is another really good one, and it's grown in Canada, so a nice sustainable source. It's actually a wild flax seed, and it has a really nutty, delicious flavor to it. So those are, off the top of my head, some good sources of like oils, and then good sources of fats, fatty fish like salmon, sardines, tuna. You can get healthy fats from where else? We did our nuts and seeds. Healthy sources. Oh, from eggs. So egg yolks are like nature's multivitamin. Never, ever, ever throw away an egg yolk. And if someone tries to tell you to do so, run away. Because the egg yolk is where you are getting your healthy omega fats. You're getting choline, which is sort of a type of fat or nutrient that's amazing for your brain health. You're getting lots of B vitamins. So egg yolks are a fabulous, fantastic source of healthy fats and nutrition. So that's one of my favorites. And I love a nice, like, gooey, runny egg yolk on like a Buddha bowl or something like that. So those are a few sources of healthy fats. And anything, any other question with that one, Anne, or did that kind of tick the boxes?
No, I know the nuts and the avocados. That was great. I was looking for snack ideas, but even roasting seeds in
Yeah.
oil sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I love toasted pumpkin seeds is a really nice one. I throw hemp hearts in basically everything.
Okay.
They're so they just kind of dissolve into whatever you put them in, and they have a really nice, like, nutty but kind of light flavor. And so hemp hearts, I love a almond butter with apple slices. That's my favorite
Okay.
snack. Like a kindergartner, I could have that every
Okay.
single day. So yeah, so your nut butters and
Okay.
things like that make great snacks. Energy balls, coconut, shredded coconut. Like if you
All
put that
right.
into snacks, that's a really good one. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and
Thanks.
yeah, you're very welcome. So next question, Sue, from Patricia. Do regular prescribed medication for cholesterol, blood pressure, depression, etc., contribute to leaky gut? It would depend on the specific medication. I'd have to actually look at the medication and see. I always say, if you are taking those medications, it doesn't hurt to give your gut some extra support, just to be on the safe side, right? Doing the things to support your healthy gut is never going to go wrong. And those medications can be really crucial and really helpful for people. So if I always say, if you're taking them, just kind of give your gut a little bit of extra love.
I don't take them. I have some family members. I'm just curious. So
Yeah.
that's what.
Just, I mean, anything at any point, just supporting that gut health is never going to be a bad choice. So, but I'd have to actually look at the specific medications to know. And then the next question here, can we claim group coaching? I think I already covered that. Yes, if you're in New Brunswick and not with Blue Cross or Industrial Alliance, I've got receipts that I can send out for every session. And then Kirsten, you've got a good one. I'll do the one on the nuts and seeds first, since we're kind of on that, and then I'll do the second one. So is it too much in one serving sitting to eat several form of oils and nuts, like an oatmeal with almond butter, hemp hearts, flax seeds, and pumpkin seeds? I don't think so. Depends on the person's digestion, but if you're not putting like half a cup of every single thing, then you're going to be fine. But you want to, thanks for coming, Allison. I appreciate you joining us tonight. I hope you have an awesome evening. We'll see you again, hopefully sometime soon.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Allison. Have a good one. So I don't think necessarily incorporating more than one type at a time is a bad thing. You just want to, maybe do a spoonful of each. I do a hot chocolate elixir in the morning, and I put almond butter, some hemp hearts, and macadamia milk in there. So I'm getting healthy fat from a few sources. And then I just, in later meals, I might have quite a bit less fat in them, or, it just sort of all balances out in the day. The thing I always suggest is just really listening and checking in with your body. If you feel great when you do that, and your blood sugar feels stable, and you're feeling full, and it keeps you full and satisfied, and you're not getting any sort of stomach cramping or pain, then that's generally a sign that what you're eating is working well for you. If you find you eat a meal and it is a little higher in fat, and you're getting some pain in the digestive system and things, you might need a little bit of extra support with that digestion, and you might need to eat smaller amounts spaced out more throughout the day. So just, give a little check-in, and I think this works for anything that we're eating. Just like check in after you eat and see, how do I feel energetically? Do I feel like, oh my God, I'm exhausted? How do I feel physically? Is my gut kind of churning and gurgling and feeling uncomfortable? Do I feel really bloated? Do I feel kind of full and satisfied and energetic? Just check in and see how these different things are making you feel on a daily basis. And you don't have to do it for every single meal all the time, but you kind of start to get a sense of how different foods are going to make you feel when you do that little kind of mindful moment check-in. And that's how you'll be able to tell if, having those different types and amounts at once is going to be too much or not enough, or anything like that. So your other question, Kirsten, was on greens powders with probiotics in them. So greens powders can be really wonderful for folks who are very busy and on the go, and, just want to get that little extra boost of nutrition into their day. I find the amount of probiotics in them is pretty negligible. You're not likely going to see too much of a change in your probiotic intake with, a greens powder that might have, usually they have maybe like 2 billion or 5 billion colonizing forming units of probiotics, compared to some of the supplements where you're going to be looking for, 50 billion, 60 billion, or the one I recommend to a lot of my clients. And if you've worked with me, cultured coconut, which is a fermented coconut kefir that contains, 4 trillion colonizing forming units of probiotics in 1 tablespoon. So I think the greens powders are amazing for other reasons. I think you can get a lot of antioxidants and vitamins and things from a greens powder. The probiotics in there probably not going to make a super huge difference. And you might want to look at either taking a supplement or eating other fermented foods. So, yogurts or apple cider vinegar or kombucha or kimchi, and you want them to be unpasteurized. So when we pasteurize them, it kills off those beneficial bacteria. So if you're eating a fermented food, just make sure it's an unpasteurized food that you're consuming, and then that'll give you those food-based probiotics that can be a little more colonizing for the digestive system. So greens powders, good, and like them. I think they're a great addition. Not necessarily the best probiotic supplement. Does that answer that question for you, Kristen? All right. Yes. Perfect. And Rhiannon, okay, is tempeh a good option? I love tempeh. Tempeh is a fabulous fermented soy product. It's super versatile. It's got a really interesting, great texture. It can be used in a lot of different preparations. It's high in protein, and the fermentation process makes it really easily digestible and absorbable. So I really love tempeh. When we cook it, we're going to lose probably some of those probiotic bacteria in there. But in general, I think tempeh is a really great food to incorporate into your meal planning and into your diet. A great protein source, and you get some fiber and things in there as well. So yeah, I love, love, love tempeh. And you can do some really fun, creative cooking with that food. So another good question. Thank you. Patricia. Oh, thanks for coming, Kaylee. Have a great night. And okay, Patricia, chia seeds are fiber, and I thought hemp seeds were also fiber. Please clarify. All right, so chia seeds and hemp hearts both are a combination of fiber and fat. So hemp hearts are higher in fat than they are in fiber, but they still have fiber in them. And chia seeds are higher in fiber than they are in fat, but they still have some of those omega fats in them. So if you're looking to get a lot of bang for your buck fiber-wise, I go chia. If you're looking to get bang for your buck fat-wise, hemp heart. You can always combine them. I like the two together. They're a good balance. So that was a good question, Patricia. Thanks for asking. Any other questions here? You feel free to take yourself off mute or pop it in the chat if you'd like. All right. Doesn't seem like we've got any more. You're very welcome, Patricia. Thanks for coming. If you think of anything else and you're like, oh, I should have asked in the presentation, pop me an email and I'm happy to respond. I can talk about this stuff all day, every day. So I appreciate you all so much for taking the time out of your probably very busy evening to come and learn a little bit about the foundations of nutrition with me. And like I mentioned, if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, you're welcome to check out the small group coaching. That'll be starting November 9th and running for 4 weeks. Last time I ran it, it was a ton of fun. I think actually, Ree, you were part of that group, and it was a really fun way to connect and kind of dig in and just learn things without a lot of pressure or stress. So I'd be happy to have you join. Like I said, if you have any questions after this presentation, feel free to send me a message. I will send out the slides tomorrow as well as a link to the actual talk. So if you're like, oh, what did she say about this? You can kind of fast forward through and zip around and find our little session. So again, thank you so very much. It was so nice seeing your faces, hearing your voices if you popped in. And I appreciate seeing you all. If you want to pop in and give a little wave goodbye. Love
Caitlin,
that.
what time was the Tuesday night group
So the
coaching?
Tuesday night is, I believe, 7 to 8.
Okay, great.
And then they are recorded as well. So last time we had people who couldn't always make the live one, but I always posted it the next day so that you could join. Yeah, so 7 to 8 p.m. Atlantic time, I think 6 to 7 Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. I think I've done them a few times now.
You've done a few different things. So
well, thanks, Caitlin. That was great. I learned a lot.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Kate.
much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll send out the little slide for you and any other little information. If you think of it, feel free to send me a message. So thanks for coming. Sean, there's your face. Thanks for coming. I see you there. Ellen,
you.
Kristen, and thank you. Thanks for coming. Carol's actually in the foundations group already. So if you join, you'll get to chat with Carol. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.